Australia Overnight, time to talk real estate with Mark Errichiello, who's an independent buyer and vendor advocate from Master Advocates. Hi there, Mark. Hello,
hey,
mate.
Dave, how are you?
I'm
good.
good.
To be speaking with you.
Yeah, great to have you
thanks
back
for
on the
having me
show and catching up again. Now, let's start with this one. So we're a national show, as you know, but when it comes to property and taxes and all the stuff that seems to float around that area, Victoria always features pretty strongly. So on our list is this decision or something going on at the Marybeck Council. They've got a radical plan to spike rates for landlords. Can you tell me more about this, please, Mark?
Yeah, so it is a local council, but it's something that is received nationally when it comes to planning and rates and planning approvals. Everyone experiences it in each state, and in particular, this week there was 5 out of 6 councillors, which was concerning in the Marybeck Council, that have put forward a motion to double the council rates for property investors in Marybeck. So it's the north side of Melbourne, comes suburbs like Coburg, Brunswick, Pascoe Vale, that region, and then decrease rates for owner-occupiers was the motion. Right. So the motion was supported by 5 of the 6 councillors, but the motion to investigate if they can legally implement it.
Right. So if I'm hearing you correctly here, Mark, I'm going to fall off my chair here. I can't. So they're going to double the rates.
I should have asked if you were sitting down.
So the proposal has gone to council, for this Marybeck Council, to double the rates for property owners, number one, and secondly, to reduce the rates for owner-occupiers, right? So basically
owner-occupiers. So if you own an investment property, you're going to get double the rates. And look, it is an election year for councils.
They should all be sacked, Mark. They should all be sacked. Yeah. Every single one of them.
You need a balance. You need a balance, and you need some forward-thinking, long-term side effects. There could be short-term gains. They're saying their idea is to make housing more affordable, release more housing as well for owner-occupiers and first home buyers. And that's a bit of a utopian idea, because not all first home buyers, especially in the metro suburbs, can afford property in suburbs like Coburg and Brunswick. So you're going to be left with a panic. Property investors are already starting to panic in that area about what's going to happen. And if they flood the market and the properties can't be purchased by either new investors or owner-occupiers, and investors are already struggling to see value in Victoria in the short term, but long-term gain, there's plenty of value here. So there can be a huge issue, and the people that they're trying to protect, like owner-occupiers and renters, the renters especially are the ones that are going to suffer. If they can't afford to buy and they can't afford to pick up those properties that become available, their rents are going to continue to rise. We're in the middle of a national rental and housing affordability and rental crisis. Yeah. And so that's going to get worse in that particular area, and it may spread out.
This is another example, Mark, of councils sort of operating outside of their sort of realm. So this Marybeck Council is going to create this new world in their sort of boundaries, where the rent will be skyrocket high, as you say. It'll be all distorted, all out of sort of whack with everybody else. I know there's many reasons why this shouldn't be done. And they should be focusing on what they've been voted to do. The rates, the rubbish, and the other are the roads.
And at all levels of government, without throwing stones at particular parties, but at all levels of government, especially local municipalities, when it comes to sensible planning and approval to meet these, the housing statement goals that we need, the new supply, there should be sensible development, low density, low rise development in some of the suburban streets and maybe the higher activity zones and main roads, some higher density development, not high rise, but supply more housing. that shouldn't get tied up and approved with holding costs and other delays that affect the building industry that's already struggling. So there's no incentive there for builders to take risks when certain councils reject sensible development. So at that level as well,
yep.
And they should consult industry. They make these decisions or these motions without experience, without boots on the ground.
Oh, that's right. No idea.
And they don't consult industry. It's always, reactive that we need to warn them of the outcome.
Mm.
And so that's a concern there. But the actual rental prices increasing from a side effect of what would happen if they do double the investor rates, and then also, if the property market gets flooded and those properties don't get purchased, and they, the renters are vacated, you've got vacant properties, property prices will come down in the southern, collectively. So then the revenue for the council drops because property prices have come down. And if the investors are gone, who have they got left to attack? The owner-occupiers that they're trying to, state that they're going to support and give them lower rates right now. That won't last forever. That's what.
Well, that's another thing. Yeah,
a utopian idea. It's very short term. Not long sighted.
Yes. Australia Overnight, 133693 to join the conversation, talking real estate with Mark Errichiello, independent buyer and vendor advocate from Master Advocates, and also staying on Victoria, the rental minimum standards. So the government of Victoria, on top of the land tax increases and the interest rate pressures as well, and cost of living pressures, they've decided to add more minimum standards to improve an existing property.
They're considering that, yes, and they're consulting at the moment in the consulting process. But we already had 130 reforms in the rental industry that were prepared during the lockdown periods, and they were implemented and mandated at the beginning of 2023. And much of that was the minimum standard, which was needed for a lot of properties. Most properties were already in a fair standard, but you have properties that weren't safe, with electrical hazard-wise, or they didn't have gas safety checks. There was no regular checks. So those checks that apply now as a minimum standard, most of them apply to being in good structural order, not having black mould or mould and dampness issues, having all your equipment and structure of the property and fixtures and fittings working, like doors and locks, and then your gas safety, no gas leaks, electrical switchboards and wiring safe, up-to-date, smoke detectors. That's what we've been managing and having annual checks of smoke alarms. And
the annual checks and those minimum standards. So is electrical and plumbing, is Victoria in line with other states when it comes to that? You're 100% right. We want to make sure the properties are in good nick and that they're safe for those who go in there. But is it more arduous for those in Victoria than other places?
I'd say now our standards are higher, yes, as far as the checks. But what they're suggesting now is more around the sustainability and energy efficiency, adding more mandatory requirements of investors in Victoria. For example, parts of the consideration is drought proofing, ceiling insulation, hot water efficiency, and then adding cooling to a mandated duty and mandatory duty. So, look, it's if everything was not happening at once, it wouldn't be so much pressure and stress for investors here. But you've got increased land taxes,
yes, that's right.
Interest rates, and then then you've got council coming from the other end in some suburbs.
Yes, they're all good. Everyone's got their hands in the pockets of property owners, don't they? What is it about this? Why all of a sudden do we hate investors so much and hate people who purchase properties? And we're targeting this sector so often, especially in Victoria. Is it because it's so cashed up? It's a honeypot for governments that have mismanaged their own budgets.
Well, there could be a perception that if you've got an investment property, you're wealthy, so you can be, they can be scraped for additional revenue and taxes. And we are in a state of debt and stress in the state of Victoria, and other states are still recovering as well from the effects of COVID too, but the economic effects. But with some of these, I think they need to be considered. Are they needed right now? Can they, how long? Even the suggestion of additional, mandatory expenses puts stress in the minds and anxiety.
Yes, that's right.
Cash flow
right.
come from.
So if I'm a politician, sitting around with my meeting, do you reckon that might cross my mind, that it's a stressful time? I might look at the news and realise that there's people out there hurting and under pressure when I add another tax or another minimum standard or another idea that I've cooked up in the shower and not really considered the environment that I'm introducing these ideas into. I mean, are they sort of not
investment
attached?
properties, we desperately need to find solutions rather than blaming each other or blaming government or politicians. We need to find solutions to keep the current stock in the market from declining. It's declining already. There's less loans being applied for at the banks for investment property, especially for Victoria. And the net, I've looked at data recently from some very trusted sources that have conducted the research, and the data is showing that we're already at a net loss of at least 1% and probably rising of the amount of existing stock in the rental market. And then we're waiting for the housing supply to increase and be realised, with the housing statement. So local councils are going to announce shortly what their plan is for the 2050 vision and the how they're going to align with the housing statement goals.
Geez, that's frightening.
Right? So that will be announced. But announcements, talk is cheap. We have to see what happens. And so, especially in an election year, let's see what happens when actual planning goes through and you see new construction at a reasonable design.
Yes.
But even these points going back to minimum standards being increased for efficiency, things like ceiling insulation to be improved. It's no point just approving ceiling insulation. You've got the walls; it needs to be tanked and boxed in, and then you're going to run into a double-edged sword with what about the properties of a period like 1990s and earlier, where there may have been some asbestos and things like that. That as long as you're not tampering with it, walls and plaster, as long as you're not tampering with it, it can be safe. You start mandating that, these properties, it becomes it's not feasible then to refurbish them and update them.
Cost you a fortune, absolutely.
So you open up a can of worms.
Yes. Now, if you're an investor, just looking at your notes here, investors really need to explore tax depreciation. So I'm trying to think now how we can gain a benefit. If we're an investor and we want to sort of do what many people have done and sort of, aspirational people maybe purchase a property and look after their future, explore tax depreciation and tax benefits to be maximised, and government need to work on tax benefits and incentives. So as an investor, is there any way I can make this work for me?
Well, look, securing the property is one, but then looking at the types of properties that there's tax experts and there's great companies like MCG Quantity Surveyors and Tax Depreciation Services. They're fantastic group, and they're aligned with a lot of associations and members of groups that operating, like the Real Estate Institute of Victoria and the Real Estate Buyers Agents Association of Australia, PIPA, the Property Investment Professionals, as well. So with tax depreciation, they'll maximise the return on items of the home over a certain period. Most properties after 1987, they can apply the tax depreciation, and if the properties depreciate over 40 years, the actual structure, and then there's new items or renovations and refurbishments. So looking at the date ages of the properties that you have, there could be some money sitting there unclaimed if they haven't gone and sought out a quantity surveyor to conduct the tax depreciation report.
That's good advice.
They can start at like $600 for a report, initial report, and some people get thousands of dollars back in the first year.
Yep.
Right?
So speak to your accountant.
They pay for themselves.
Speak to your accountant
and
quantity
refer
surveyor.
them to a quantity surveyor that does tax depreciation reports for investment property. And that's both residential and commercial.
Oh, good. Okay. Good on you, Mark. It's always great to have you on. Enjoy your Sunday. How's the kids going? How's the family going? Everybody growing up and doing okay?
Well, look, we're still in a great country. We've got, activities and school and everyone's well. Thanks, Pat, and hope your family is too. And the the dog's,
Yes,
eating
true.
well.
I'll always ask you about the dog. Your big
Things
Alsatian.
Could be a lot worse.
It could be a lot worse. And you're lucky that you're on Sunday morning, because we sort of try to lighten it up a bit on Sunday morning Australia Overnight, because yesterday morning, there was a lot of chatter about a particular ex-Premier of Victoria who received an award, and the phones blew up. So we're just taking it easy. So don't even mention it.
I thought it was fake news at first. But no, it wasn't.
Yes, we had a few people saying they thought it was a bad joke. Okay, good on you, Mark. It's always a pleasure, mate, and we'll catch you next time on Australia Overnight.
Oh, thanks, Pat. Pleasure, and thanks for having me. Take care.
Mark Errichiello, the independent buyer and vendor advocate from Master Advocates.